Welcome to the Americus podcast. My name is John Schroeder, and today I am joined by Ryan Iafigliola. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Awesome. So, Ryan, I got a chance to meet you actually at the Rylander, right downtown. Our children were in the same play together, and so we kind of get a basic introduction. But also, our wives know each other. I think that they kind of met in the library. Our son has the same name, Judah, so that was kind of unique. So I think the librarian was like, hey, you probably need to meet together. And so that kind of started that relationship. And also, even with gymnastics, so we kind of go to the same circles, even being Christians, being in the kind of the church world and church context. And so, and then I got a chance to hear about you being a part of the Fuller Center, but also a part of the Sumter Cycling. And so just a start of a great story. And so I just wanted you to be on the podcast and share a little bit of that. So thank you so much again for coming on. So Ryan, tell me a little bit about what was it like growing up? Tell us a little bit about your life.
Well, I didn't grow up here in Americus, Georgia. I think when people hear my voice, that might be the first question that people ask, where are you from? And it's not from here. I grew up in the Cleveland, Ohio area, suburb of Cleveland, Parma, Ohio. And maybe most people feel this way, but I feel like I had, in many ways, a very ordinary childhood. Probably extraordinary in just one way that I was very extraordinarily blessed. You know, I just feel like I had wonderful parents who really made their children a priority in their life, and I was the beneficiary of that. Wow. And just really cared for me in many ways. And I had two siblings, an older brother, younger brother, so we always had friends to do things with around the house and make up all kinds of our own games. My older brother and I would always be on the same team against our younger brother. We felt that was the only way it was fair. But that was kind of our childhood dynamics, and just had a pretty modest upbringing, neither rich nor poor. We started in a pretty small home when I was young, most of my life. We moved in a little bigger home, nothing too extraordinary. So I think pretty kind of middle class America up there in many ways.
Okay. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, what did your family do? What were your parents' kind of occupations? And share a little bit about that.
Sure thing. Yeah, my dad worked construction. He's a civil engineer, but helps run a construction company. And my mom is a teacher, a music teacher of small kids. About K-4.
Nice.
And when we were younger, though, she stayed home with us. That was a decision she made. So we had our mom with us for many years, and then she went back to teaching after we got a little older.
Okay. Yeah. So did she practice on you guys with teaching, just with music? Like, was she obviously musically inclined, so therefore she was like, hey, what do y'all think about this? Was that kind of a...
Well, she really tried to get... She had only boys, and we love sports and things. And she would really try to get us to play piano and bribe us with money for ice cream and all kinds of things, and we would do a little of that, but music was never our first love. But she was vindicated later on because I married a music teacher myself, so
nice.
It worked out in the end, but maybe not the way that she was anticipating.
I got you. So what sports did you play?
Yeah, so probably our main ones would be baseball, basketball. You know, when we were younger, you could play everything. You don't have to be a star.
Yep.
So everything the school would offer, we'd pretty much sign up for it and play in city leagues. So baseball, basketball, volleyball, a little bit older. I never played football, tackle football, just maybe some backyard football, flag football, that type of thing. Track. I ran track through high school, and what am I missing? I don't know. Fast pitch, slow pitch, softball, baseball, a little bit of soccer, not too much.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So let's just say young Ryan, 6, 8, 10 years old. What did you want to be when you grew up? Or did you have some thought about that?
That was always a hard question. I think even back then, people say, I don't know. I just want to finish the school year and have summer vacation. You know, I think that was about as far as I would think ahead, or at least know what I might want to do. I do remember, so one thing I was blessed with, I always had a knack for doing well in school. I don't know why. I tested well, do well on tests. I like to do well, so I did, even though I love sports, I did study hard. That was a priority for me, and trying to do well academically. And I remember from a young age some teachers saying things like, oh, he could do anything he wants to do. So I say, okay, that's
a great
great.
Encouragement.
That's a good encouragement. and then you say, huh, but what do I want to do? And I never knew. And we can maybe talk about some of that a little bit later.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. So, was this a part of your family dynamic too? Like, did your parents do well in school, and you were just like, man, like, what was it a part of you to aspire to do that as well, or it just came so natural to you? There wasn't any connection there.
Well, I think we all tend to forget our earliest years and the role that parents probably play in really instilling those values and helping you prepare for tests and making sure your homework's done. And I think my parents, especially my mom, did a lot of that when we were younger. But they did it in such a way I never felt like they were pushers. It was never a situation where it was like, oh, they're going to be so mad at me, or they have to bribe me, or something. It was just our life, and they handled it gracefully enough that by the time you get older, you just kind of want to do it on your own.
Okay. So high school, what was high school Ryan like?
Well, I hope we haven't lost your audience yet. I feel like I'm the most boring interview with this normal life story here. But high school, what did I told you I ran track. I studied pretty hard in school. Didn't get a lot of sleep because I was involved with activities, and also really still prioritized my schoolwork. So in many ways, I felt like high school sometimes was harder than college, just because of playing sports. And I was in some theater. I did some plays and some musicals, and just some other extracurriculars there. And by the time those are done, come home. It's pretty late. Still got put in the schoolwork time. Like college, for example, for those of you who have had that experience, you have more freedom in your schedule. You have a few classes a day, you have some time in between. But high school, they got you captive from 8 in the morning till like mine was 2:29 in the afternoon when we would get out. And then you do some things after that. So you're a lot more limited in your time you can put into different activities. So it was challenging. It was great. I think you get a lot more freedom and begin to find yourself in some ways and experiment and see what you're good at.
What so you grew up in the same place, kind of same area, so you had some pretty long-term friendships and stuff like that. As far as community is concerned, what was community like for you? Were you a very personable, relational kind of person, or do you like more the task and people were there? Like, what was it like just kind of in your friendship dynamic too?
I don't know. I hope I had a few friends that I had back then. So I went to the same church throughout all that life. So I had a lot of church friends. And in terms of school, I went to one school from preschool through 8th grade, and then switched at high school. So it's pretty much all new people at high school. So that was a big, I guess, transition there. And of course, you're thrown in like everyone. You're a freshman, first year, probably still tail end of puberty or whatever. I'm sure awkward and all that. My older brother was a senior that year, so he didn't shove me into any lockers, but helped me get to know some people, so that was good, and showed me some ropes there at the school.
That's awesome.
Like I said,
that's great. So you tested well. So where did you end up in college? Like from high school to college, what was that like?
I went to a Catholic high school and ended up going to a Catholic university then, University of Notre Dame, which I think is sometimes called like the Disneyland for Catholics or something. I actually wasn't Catholic when I went to that school, but I think it was held in a very high esteem by the school there, and so that probably rubbed off on me in some ways. And I still didn't know what I wanted to study. I went from age 6, when you asked me earlier, what did I want to be when I grew up, to senior in high school. Still didn't really know. I was kind of thinking maybe something engineering, maybe some kind of business. And so different schools would have different strengths in those different areas. But I felt like with Notre Dame, I could go either way, and they would have a good program. And
so I would assume that you had maybe some other colleges that you were thinking of, and so Notre Dame would just kind of fit that. Hey, they're going to give me that time and the space to be able to kind of process that.
That's right.
That's awesome. So, all right, let me ask you this. Like, so you're sitting there with a counselor, right, kind of working through your framework. Were they trying to push you in a certain way, or what was that feeling like? Like just being there and people asking you, hey, what are you going to do? Did you feel the pressure of having to figure that out, or?
Well, it's certainly a big decision, so you wrestle with that. And, I was thinking, well, maybe I should just choose. What is this kicking the ball down the road thing. You know, maybe just make a choice. So yeah, you know, there's some pressure on that, but like I said, I felt like, well, at least if I choose this option, I have time, and either way, it should end up with a good result.
Yeah. So what did you end up pursuing?
So I ended up studying business. I got a degree in finance, and I didn't get a degree in entrepreneurship, but I took as many entrepreneurship classes as I could. That was really what I kind of grabbed onto, is a bit more of a passion, like taking an idea and just turning it into something. So taking nothing into something. And that's what I kind of saw entrepreneurship as. I also kind of recognized, like, that's great, but if I don't have a business idea right now, I'm not Mark Zuckerberg, who just started Facebook in the middle of my college career. Unless I know what I want to do with that. How do you get a job saying I'm an entrepreneur? They might say, so you're going to try to steal my business idea, or like, what are you up to here? So I got the finance degree, and I just took all those classes and tried to learn what I could about how to make something go.
Gosh, I have kind of that entrepreneurial bent too, and so I'll be like, oh, what about this? What about that? You know, just getting excited. I love things like Shark Tank now. I just like make my kids watch it. I'm just like, you know, think about things because there's a lot that people can create, and so all right. Well, then looking back at that, just even in your past, like, did you start to see that kind of that entrepreneurial spirit in you throughout your life too, and kind of? Did that help kind of solidify, like, yes, I want to take these entrepreneurial classes? Like, what sparked that? Like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna take those classes.
That's a good question. I don't know. You know, my brothers and I, we did some small businesses up north, shoveling snow. I really miss having that business down here. It really cost me dearly. Raking leaves. So we just did little things that youth can do to earn some money up there. You know, I think maybe one aspect where it began to play out even at that early stage for me was I felt like God was calling us to do more with our lives, to not just seek to make the greatest dollar. And even though I was studying finance, which I felt like was a little bit of a contradiction, maybe not what would be expected of me, I felt that calling early on. So maybe if I would backtrack just a step there that I didn't mention, when I was in high school, I began volunteering with a program called Inward Bound in the city of Cleveland. And there would be high school youth who would come from all over the area as well as out of state, but people from all over the country would come for this week-long program, urban immersion in the city of Cleveland, just kind of seeing what God was doing in the city, seeing how we can be a part of it. And this was really designed for people like me who did not grow up in an urban environment, grew up in suburbia, grew up in rural areas, to bring us in, to expose us to something completely different, give us different viewpoints, and see what God was up to. And I think that really touched me. And now one of my very first experiences with that, so we would volunteer very often with several programs, but including Habitat for Humanity during the day. And the founder of Habitat for Humanity was, of course, a man from right here in Americus named Millard Fuller, and read his story about his quest for wealth. He became a self-made millionaire, and it basically ruined his life, the quest for wealth. And he always acknowledged that wasn't his situation. That might not be universal for everyone, but he had become so focused on getting rich that it had torn apart his family. He had no longer truly fulfilled becoming the role of a father in his household. He was providing for his father. He was faithful to his family on paper, but his time and energy and emotions were all in his work. He wasn't at all spending time with his family. And how that had led he and his wife, Linda, to seek a new start, to see where God would lead them. And so I read that at a young age, and that touched me. That made me think, what am I aiming towards? Where am I trying to go? What am I trying to accomplish? And that stuck with me. So when I was in high school, one thing that I did do was work to start a chapter there at my high school, and we did a number of different volunteer activities, volunteer days with local affiliates in that area. That the school, we were organized with students. We had an interesting experience with that because it wasn't an official organization of the school, so we always had to be a little careful. They said, no, you can't meet at the school before you go. You got to meet somewhere else. So we said, okay, we're going to meet at the other school in town and go out there. But we did have a lot of supporters from there, and certainly some great faculty who helped us out and students. And that to me was just kind of getting my my feet wet in that. So when I went to college, it was something I knew I wanted to continue, although I didn't know exactly how. I didn't know what I wanted to study. I knew that was something that was going to be a part of my life there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's intriguing too, because as your life's kind of being shaped and molded, and the reality that you're taking finances, but then you're the entrepreneurial aspect of it, so that you can see your life and see what the potential is. But then with this story of Mr. Fuller, the reality that what can it be used for? Again, for him, it was directly at this point in his life, it was only used for one thing, and then the potential of the power of his dynamic and his desire to see it now shape into another area of his life for giving. And so now you kind of have some of that in you. You're like, all right, I know what money does. I know how money works. At the same time, I'm looking at it going, okay, what does God want me to do with this now? So what leads you to Americus from Notre Dame?
Yeah, sure. So that was kind of entrepreneurial, launching nothing into something, these organizations, or taking an organization that was there, trying to help it grow, doing fundraisers. That's very kind of entrepreneurial in many ways still.
Very much so, yeah.
And as I was getting near graduation, I had become acquainted with Millard Fuller. Okay. Through my work with Habitat for Humanity, I had invited him to come up and speak on our campus for a weekend of events. Wow. And he accepted, to my kind of astonishment and cool. My excitement. And he came up there. We just had a great time. He spoke on campus. He had some other friends in the area, which lined up a lot of events, covered all the costs, things I probably should have thought of before I ever invited him up. Yeah. Like, oh, are we paying for that? But, he had friends up there. So he was great. He helped take care of so many details, and kind of got to just be with him for that weekend that he was up there.
Okay.
And that was my junior year of college. And so it was coming up to senior year. I had done some other internships. So I'm looking at various kind of options for me. And if you'd like, I'll take a minute to share a little bit of this story. So I wrote Millard a letter one day and said, as I'm looking at different opportunities after I graduate, might you have anything that I might want to think about? And this was 2 years, or about maybe a year and a half after he had started the Fuller Center for Housing in 2005. And he said, well, we're a new organization, and quite honestly, probably can't pay you the way that you're looking to get paid graduating from Notre Dame. And that was his negotiating line as I look back at it now. And my negotiating line was, well, if I did it, I was just thinking of volunteering, so I wasn't a very good negotiator. I don't know, we paid all that money for school, and look at my negotiation skills. But that's what I told him, and he said, well, we better stay in touch about it then. Yeah, the price is right. How can you say no? But I was looking at some other options. I didn't know, what path God was leading me towards. That was a pretty big leap, I felt like, to kind of do that. Well, I helped our student group up there organize a week of volunteering in Albany, just south of here, for spring break. So early March of that year, still kind of had a few options on the table. And I said, well, that would be the perfect time to come down and see if I could stop by and visit with Millard and talk to them. What would this really be like? And so I arranged that with him for that week. Came down to Albany, and like many visitors do, decided to go out to Maranatha Baptist Church and see President Carter teach Sunday school with our group. We head out there, it was packed day. We were in the waiting room, barely got a seat. By the time they seated us, because of the waiting period, President Carter started speaking. I'm embarrassed. I think President Carter thinks we're walking in late because we just showed up late to the event. But they seat us down, kind of, embarrassed, put your head down, sit down, and look up. They literally seated me right next to Millard Fuller in this church. And so I think that was like the first miracle. Like, what are the odds there that I would be seated right next to him? And then he looked right at me, and probably in a way not surprising for those who knew Millard, he recognized me right away and greeted me. Hey, Ryan Iafigliola, and said my name correctly. That's a challenge. My name is not an easy last name to say, but he knew it and he could say it right away. So awesome. I think maybe that was the second miracle. And there's just a little more to that story I want to complete. So we left church that day. We had just come from northern Indiana. That's where Notre Dame is. Frozen tundra in March still.
Yeah.
It's cold. We just thought it was heavenly down here when we saw the green grass and the beautiful March weather.
Right.
And so we said, let's go find somewhere to like just have a picnic and hang out outside. And we got to stop by a grocery store, find some food, pick up some sandwiches. So we didn't have GPS in those days. We didn't know where the store was. So we came in one side of town, came in on 19 then, turned north. We said, well, I don't know, maybe there's a grocery store up here. Well, we couldn't find the store. We ended up lost in the subdivision. When I look at it now, it's like, there's no way we should have ended there, because it's embarrassing how lost we were, you know? And we get out, we see some open land, and he's like, you know what, there's no one here, there's a big open lot, let's just hang out here. So we're not really that hungry, let's just throw a frisbee. That's what college students do, right? And hang out here for a little bit. And so we do that, and when we get back there, I look up, and I see the neighbor kind of in a distance over there, and I said, you know, as I look at it, we're a little bit more in a subdivision than just like open field, as I thought. Maybe we ought to go like, just talk with the guy, if he wants us to leave, we can leave. And start walking a little closer, and I realized that was Millard Fuller. We had showed up at his house in his backyard, you know, like, I wanted to hide. I kind of wanted to turn around and run, because this guy's going to think like, oh yeah, he said he wanted to meet with me this week. He shows up to church, he kind of seats next to me, he follows me to my house, walks into my backyard with 15 others that he brought with him, uninvited.
Wow.
I thought like, well, this is probably it. The guy's never going to respect me again, but he just puts
That's incredible.
Yeah, it really was. And he just puts his hands in the air when I try to like spit out like, hey, you know, I didn't even know it was your house. We just ended up here. And he said, you're on friendly territory. And I start thinking, you know, maybe God's trying to show me something. And he says, you know, sometimes God has a way of showing you something. So I said, okay, I give up.
Wow.
Maybe so. Maybe so. So I just really felt like God had led me here for what was next.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's so, all those confirmations are just so, and I don't know, I love confirmations. It's one of the things I think about a lot is, okay, with every decision, especially those major ones, it's, you know, if God's going to call me to like a major decision, these small little confirmations are just, I don't know, they just give you that peace, you know? And so, all right, well, let me ask you this. So then you're going to leave kind of your hometown, your place, you know, your state to come down to the South. What were some things that even before you came for the week or that you thought about the South as far as expectations, and what were kind of the realities of that coming from your culture down here? Anything that you want to share?
Yeah, well, you know, and I don't think that all those confirmations came because I was more faith-driven or more called or something. I always thought it was probably because I was the most scared and the most unsure and the most stubborn, would probably look for excuses not to come. And thinking about, what would it be like down here? This totally new environment to me, far away, and you know, I never felt like this would be for a short-term thing, just to come down here for you know, a few months or even 1 year. You know, I didn't know it could be the case, but I kind of sensed this would be longer. So what would that be like? I had a positive view of the area, you know, from hearing some of the stories of Millard Fuller and Clarence Jordan and what they had done here over the years. I had a positive impression of Americus before I arrived, so that probably helped. Yeah, I didn't think this was a terrible place to go and live, but it was still very different in terms of town size. And one thing I still miss here would be Italian restaurants. We just don't have as many Italian restaurants as where I grew up. But it was lovely. You know, that was one that was an adjustment for parents too. You know, say like, you're going where, and how small of a town is it, and is there a place to buy food there? It's not that small. It's not that small. It is a city. It's a city. But you know, it was a very different environment for sure.
That's great. That's great. So you get here and you work with Millard for a full year, correct? And then kind of what were the dynamics to kind of lead you up to today? So what kind of got you to this moment right now? Okay. What was it like working for the Full Center at this point? Yeah,
well, and I was with Millard there for about a year and a half, 17 months before he passed away very unexpectedly. That was a big kick to the gut, I think, for everyone who knew him, because it was very unexpected. He was a picture of health, He was 74 years old, but the most energetic 74-year-old you ever met, and inspiration. And I think for all of us who were involved, it was kind of, okay, so what now? Was this just something that we kind of were doing for him? Is this something that can survive? Or is this something that God led us to?
Yeah.
And we had relationships around the world of people who had already begun to do things in their community because of what he had started. And so we just felt like, and I know I felt like, well, it's not the kind of promotion you want, but I guess that's one way you get promoted. Like, you got some big shoes to fill. You got a lot that you need to try to do, and not any one person's filling those shoes, but we all need to step up and try to continue this dream and this legacy. And so, I think that was, in the initial shock of that was a big motivation. And of course, Millard is still a big inspiration.
Yeah.
But for anyone, I think at some point in your life, you don't do it because of just someone you were blessed to get to know. But you have to continue to feel like that God's calling you to it, and that God wants you to continue to be part of it. That's the downside of that great calling here, is how do you know when it's time to leave? So I don't know if you can count on that again. But I've had the chance now to visit so many of these communities around the world. So today, my role is with our international programs of the Fuller Center, and we have partners in about 20 countries around the world. Very grassroots. We're not a franchise type of model where it's very cookie cutter. It's maybe more of like church planting or something, where different communities are going to have some of their own flavors, and they're going to adapt to fitting. How can they fill what's really needed in that community? What works well there, and what's not being met? What needs aren't being met? And I've seen where we're working, and I've seen the lives that we're touching. And I see so many other families that still need what we can provide. This partnership housing. I see the transformation, that going from houses that we couldn't imagine here. We do have some families who live in some difficult situations here. But with my work international, I also see some really low and sad situations that are even hard for probably anyone here to imagine. And we have the opportunity, like very few people do, from this level of affluence, to directly be involved in their lives and to do something about it. And we're very careful not to do it in a way that's just a handout. Here, have a house. We've come in. We've changed your life. But it's trying to work through those local communities and to help them realize their potential, so it's sustainable, so it grows over time. I'd love to hear. I mean, just really quickly, just kind of like the basics of how do you find kind of the benefactor, and kind of what's the process, kind of, what's their responsibility, what's that local community's responsibility. And then just kind of share a little bit about maybe even kind of what the future is, kind of where you see the Fuller Center going. So if you want to share anything on that, that'd be great. Yeah, so with our international programs, we go where we're invited. Okay. So we don't really pick a spot on the map and say, strategically we need to open something else in Southeast Asia. But we have someone from there, and it can't remain one person. It has to become a group of people who would become a board of directors, who would appeal to us and apply to us to partner with us. Okay. They have to share kind of the mission and vision. As I mentioned, there's a lot of flexibility within that, but there are certain elements that define who we are as a Fuller Center. It can't just be everyone doing anything that they want. So it has to be focused on housing, permanent housing specifically. We're not doing kind of temporary shelter. For example, after disasters, you might see that. And we found that temporary shelter becomes permanent for families. So philosophically, we focus our time and energy and resources on permanent shelter, for example. This idea of partnership with families, that families repay the costs, that they help build the homes. So these local communities come to us, recognize the need in their area, say, what the Fuller Center does fits within what we need to do here. But we don't want to go it alone, basically. We want to connect and be part of a wider network for whatever reasons. Lots of different reasons for that. And so then that community, they're the ones who are responsible for family selection. They have some non-discrimination type rules that they follow. But they're the ones who actually choose the families, take those applications, visit the homes, get to know the situation to make sure this is really applicable. We're not trying to figure that out from Americus. I don't think that would make much sense or be very effective. So, so they're the ones doing that. And we operate through them and work to support them and help them grow and further develop themselves.
Yeah. Okay. And one of the things that I noticed was part of the Fuller Center was that you connected, this is your entrepreneurial spirit in you, cycling, right? So it's a part of that as well.
Yeah.
And then you've started another thing here, right, in Sumter, correct, for Sumter Cycling. So what made you think about going that route specifically about cycling? Was that something that just interested you, or?
Yeah, well, I wasn't like an avid cyclist growing up. We went on family bike rides from time to time, but nothing for extremely long distances. But I'd heard about a group that had done like a cross-country bicycle ride as a fundraiser. And then I joined such a ride immediately after I graduated and right before I came down here. So I'd already agreed to come here.
Okay.
But I joined a cross-country bike ride and then came down here.
Okay.
And I said, well, that was a very interesting experience. And I learned how Millard and Linda Fuller had done some marathon walks, like 700-mile walk, 1,100-mile walks. And they would speak in churches and get people involved, get sponsorships. And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe the Fuller Center needs something like that. And I said, well, Millard, how old would he have been at that time? Maybe 72. Okay. I said, well, he's 72 years old. We got to go faster now, so we're going to go on bikes instead of walking. I didn't actually say that, but I did write up a little proposal for this idea on a single sheet of paper. Yeah. And submit it to him for him to consider, and went and met with him about it. And he said, I love this idea, and I'll tell you my favorite word on the page: annual.
Nice. Yeah.
I've been regretting that word ever since, because let me tell you, it's a lot of work to do kind of long distance, especially cross-country type bicycle rides, and that is what we started doing at the Fuller Center. That's what we proposed. That's what we started. We did one ride before he passed. We had the second one announced and some riders signing up before he passed away. And I had committed to annual, so here we are. Yep. We're at year 15. It's kind of grown. We do cross-country, but we also do like some week-long rides. Okay. And like 4-week rides, 2-week rides in Florida, Natchez Trace Parkway, Gulf Coast. So we picked some routes that I think are attractive and shorter, and then also some longer distance routes for those who have that dream. Yeah. And then kind of growing out of that in a very indirect way led to Sumter Cycling here in this area. So kind of the funny never before heard story is being broadcast here first. Yeah, I don't exclusive. I truly don't know that Sumter Cycling all know this story, but here it is from my perspective on that, which was one year we ordered new bicycle jerseys for the Fuller Center ride, and I said, well, we need to promote this ride. I need some people to put on these jerseys so we can get some pictures and put them on Facebook so we can promote this ride. It's a new event. How are we going to do that? So I knew a few people like to ride bikes, and created this Facebook group, Sumter Cycling, just called it. Yep. I said, hey, let's all get together and do a little ride and model some jerseys for me if you don't mind. And so we got a handful of people out there who were helpful and did that. And then we didn't really do much else with that group. But there was a man with the River Valley Regional Commission who was helping to start cycling organizations in this area, and he's looking online. Well, who in this area has a cycling organization? Sumter Cycling has Sumter County has an organization. So he contacts me and says, "Hey, would you be interested in starting a cycling organization here?" We said, "Well, sure. I don't know, what does that mean?" So we went and met with him, and that's really what led to Sumter Cycling getting started in this community.
Wow.
So, yeah, and we've had various leaders. I'm kind of back on as president, but we have a board. We're a Georgia registered nonprofit here, and that's one way we really try to kind of pour into this community and make some impact here.
Yeah. I know one of the things that you mentioned, I think I was watching like kind of an old video clip. I think it was with the Fuller Center, and you were just talking about how the impact that you guys were doing were not just for those that you were trying to impact in other countries, but also just the cyclers themselves. Like, what they're learning and what they're experiencing together. Do you see kind of that same transition into some Sumter cycling of building relationships and community for people that may not have that but really love bikes and cycling? Do you see the same value in Sumter cycling?
Yeah, I think with Sumter Cycling, we've definitely built a lot of friendships and connections here, and helped bring tourists to the area because of the events that we plan, and I think that's a positive for the whole community.
Yeah,
we just did our first ever Kids Bike Fest to promote some safe cycling for kids, so that was great, and some helmet giveaways, and we've done some helmet giveaways in the past years as well.
Yeah.
So we're trying to help promote safe cycling, build community here. I will say there's nothing like a cross-country ride to get to know each other and bond. That's like a whole nother level. But what we're doing in Sumter County here, I think still is impactful, and also helping this community in the long run be able to attract some of this, the impact from cycling, because other communities are doing it.
Yeah.
Albany's doing it. Columbus is doing it. Other cities throughout Georgia, throughout the United States are doing it. And if we don't have our name in there, if we don't have plans, if there's no one here volunteering their time to help the city and the county with those issues, then those dollars flow elsewhere. They don't end up here. We want them to come here. And so that's what we're about in trying to attract and retain those dollars that can benefit the whole community, help us have a healthier area and a place that lots of people want to live and want to come to.
Yes.
And those who are here have a higher quality of life as well.
Yeah, that's huge. I love that. And I will tell you this, one of the things, as I try to process different things or challenges, and I'm just kind of praying and thinking through things, a lot of times I'll try to look from different, like even physical perspectives. Like sometimes I'll just lay on the floor and I'll look up, because normally I'm sitting and I'm looking straight. And one of the things that I notice about you is you actually ride a bike to work, right? So you're getting to see the world as we're kind of driving through, right? And cycling is just another way of travel, but also gives you kind of a different perspective. You probably see trash on the road that I don't when I'm going 40, down the road, and you're going 8 miles an hour. I don't know how fast. I don't know if that's average or just throwing out a number there, but I think that's so unique and it's so important, and I love the idea of adding value to Americus by creating a different way that people can think and move in that way. Let me ask you this: where in Americus is kind of just a good place to just go riding a bike?
Yeah, we actually have on our website, sumtercycling.org, we have some routes in the area, some of our favorite routes that people might want to check out. But just off the top of my head, we do have some on-street markings through the city of Americus. A lot of people have probably seen some signs and bike symbols on the road that kind of indicate that's a good place to ride, or some bike lanes set aside.
Yeah.
But there's also just some great country roads in the area that a lot of adult cyclists like to go out, and teenage, kid cyclists can be out there too. Kids is always the one that's a little bit harder. There's certain neighborhoods where it feels safe to ride. And we like to bring our kids up to the college, and on weekends especially, and just let our kids ride on sidewalks. Young kids, seems like there's no problem with that either.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, well, let me ask you this. As far as we're kind of getting to the close, and so I want to do some like rapid fire questions with you, just to kind of get a chance to know you a little bit more. But one of the things that you've mentioned several different times, and this is what I love, is part of the podcast is learning how to neighbor well together. It's learning how to define community, find relationships, and help build genuine, good relationships over a long period of time. And you've talked about even just with a personal relationship, getting to know Millard, but also you've created by happenstance an opportunity for people to find community with cycling. I mean, I think that's great, because when I always think about Americus and where do you find community in Americus? There's another pocket where you can say, hey, if I like riding bikes, there's a community for me, and so that's one of the things that we want to see more and more of is, if we're going to neighbor well, where are places where community is happening and thriving? Where do you feel like you can kind of come into that? What are some other things that you've experienced, again, coming down here and living in Americus? What are some other opportunities that you see for someone like me who is a new neighbor to find community?
It's a great question. Obviously, it's going to be different for different people depending on what you're interested in. What we don't have the most of here are is planned entertainments like big sporting events and concert venues and all that. But I've always been impressed by opportunities to find community in Americus. I think that is still a strength here. So for me, I would say church has been a big center of community for us at the church that we attend on Sunday mornings, as well as other churches. We just love to connect with people who love God, who love Jesus, and want to serve Him. And so we find that churches are generally very open to that. If we want to just come and send our kids to their VBS, because our church is too small, it doesn't have one, that's fine. They'll be glad to welcome our kids there. So awesome. That has been great for us. And so now as a family with kids, we connect with families through their kids often. And I think that kind of happened with us, John, at the theater. And you can do that with some sports with kids. Sumter Cycling, as you mentioned, is another good center of that.
Yeah, so, and one of the things that we're always trying to learn about is, to neighbor well together. We want to be good neighbors. We kind of use the term next level neighbor. It's basically synonymous with being a good neighbor. What would that look like if you were a next level neighbor? What are some things as you've been, again, neighboring and also have experienced neighboring in Americus, what are some things that define a good neighbor to you?
Well, I think in your immediate vicinity of a neighbor, it's trying to get to know those who live around you. I think that's a little bit of a lost art, getting to know your people who actually live next door. Because we don't sit on our front porch. I don't sit on my front porch. You have to make an effort actually to try to get to know your neighbors a little bit. So I think someone who puts in a little bit of effort for that is good. And those who choose to get involved in various ways. I've been talking a lot about kind of global Fuller Center. We have Americus Sumter Fuller Center here. Always needs volunteers working on homes with families. We love to have people come out and do that. With the food pantry, volunteering in schools. There's many, many different ways, only some of which I've personally been able to be a part of. But I think that is a big avenue, to be outward looking. And I think that's a challenge for churches too, in a good way, a good challenge, that we aren't designed to be only a light to those who are within our doors, but to be a light into our community. And I think that's part of the calling that we have.
That's huge. So if someone wanted to kind of get connected with the local Fuller Center here in Americus, I mean, just an email, is there somewhere they can email you or call the office?
Yeah, so the Americus Sumter Fuller Center is led by a man named Jody Wade. Okay. He works out of the Client First Insurance building, and so that's actually a great place to start, to go in there and just stop and visit with him. We have people come and talk with us at our office. We are on Highway 19 on your way out of town, so we have those two different offices. Sometimes it gets a little confusing, but you're welcome to stop in and say hi to us. We'd love to see you as well. Yeah,
point you in the right direction,
But we'll mainly point you in the right direction for volunteering here.
That's awesome. All right, another couple quick questions. So what's your favorite restaurant in Americus, or just favorite restaurant in general?
You're going to get me in trouble with the restaurants that I don't mention.
Fine. You're fine. Yeah. Well, what are your favorite restaurants?
Yeah, right. I actually love Taco Ray. Okay. Over on 19. That's great. Nice. Sweet Georgia Bakery, Cafe Campesino. We love going there as well. So some of those local classics, I think, are probably the best. Yeah. Love it.
All right. So what's a favorite family activity that you like to do?
Well, you probably won't be surprised to learn that we ride some bikes. As I mentioned, we bring them to the college, and we do some activities at home. We play in our yard a lot, and my daughter right now loves Uno, so we do a lot of that.
Okay. So you've been to a couple of different places and traveling, but is there a place that you would love to go and see or experience?
I don't think I have one place kind of burning on my mind. I have Italian heritage. I've really never been throughout much of Europe or Italy. So all my travels tend to take me to places that are in the more impoverished regions of the world than that, but that would be a fun trip, maybe someday.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I wonder if, like you said, like the Italian food. Obviously, it'd be real Italian food if you get a chance to go there. All right, last question. So obviously you got a pretty busy schedule. What's your time getting up in the morning? Kind of like, what's your morning routine?
I try to do as much as I can the night before so I can get up and get going. So I'll get up, and my wife does most of the getting the kids ready in the morning to get ready for school.
Awesome.
I help a little bit. I help more at night. But in the morning, I'm just doing a little bit, getting myself ready. I eat oatmeal. It's my breakfast. Try to keep it hearty and healthy. A little peanut butter in there to give me some protein.
Yeah.
And bike to the office, about 3 miles. I don't bike every day. I don't want to misrepresent my level of cycling.
That's right.
I'll probably bike about half the times, but usually I come home for lunch, so I might bike there and back one time, drive there and back one time. Depends on the weather.
Yeah.
If it gets too hot, too cold, rainy, I'll drive.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Ryan, go ahead.
About the name for Americus people. What do you?
Oh yeah. All right. So I had this thing that I did at the very beginning, and it was I'm from Albany. I lived there most of my life.
Okay.
And Albany people are called Albanians.
Are they?
Yes. And so when I got to Americus, I was asking people that would come through here, what are people in Americus called? Like, do they have like a name?
Yeah.
Have you heard anything from your perspective of like what people are called in Americus?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. I'm still waiting to find Captain Americus. I thought that could be a cool
right.
superhero
Yeah.
locally here.
Yeah.
But Americusin, I don't know what you do.
So, and I had, well, it wasn't me, but I was talking with some other friends, and we came up with the name Americusian. But we haven't gotten a lot of, I don't think they want to throw that in the hat in their next city meetings. But yeah, so no, it was, but I'm always interested in what people would call people from Americus. So I like Americusian. I think it fits well.
Yeah, I think that could take off.
That's right. Really all right. Well, maybe our entrepreneurial spirits will figure this thing out. No, thank you, Ryan, so much for coming and spending some time getting to share a little bit of your story and what God's called you to do and why you're here. So, and we'll just continue to follow up with you guys and just let us know what's going on.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah. Hope it's interesting to someone.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome.
You can always cut the last line.
And we did the mic, and the mic's worked. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh man, thank you, man. No, man, that was great. Thank you, Ryan. Man, that was so fun. I love it, man.
Good.
It's funny. I was actually at